Okay, let's try this again. Take two, because the one I did the other day was absolute crap. Background noise galore, and this frickin' thing being a pain in my ass. Alright, so, a couple of things I have to repeat myself. Gotta stay calm on that. A couple of things to repeat. I am dealing with my laptop's webcam, and I am recording in a different spot. So, yeah, you're going to have to deal with bad video quality and really bad audio, because this mic is quiet as frick. Okay? So those are the two things. Bad video, bad audio. Second, let's get the mistake I made last time out of the way right now. Apologize for the glare too, by the way. I'm limited in when I can record. This is literally the perfect time to record, and I've got nothing that can cover that thing. I tried actually doing a blanket method. I did not feel comfortable doing that. And wearing this thing probably wouldn't have made it bad. Anyways, now that I've yapped for a couple of minutes, let's talk about the mistake I made for Volume 2. I meant to talk about Torchwick being captured, not Oobleck. Actually, Dr. Oobleck getting captured by the bad guys at the end of all of that would have been kind of more interesting, wouldn't it have been? Because then it would have been added an element to it. But whatevs. They weren't going for that. So. Okay. Here's where I gotta repeat myself again. And hopefully I can speak in even less detail so I don't be a pain in everybody's butt with this. I mentioned a guy by the name of Shane Newville. Now, he was the lead animator on the Beacon arc. I believe Volumes 1 and 2 he was the lead animator, but I could be wrong about that. And he was, of course, Monty's friend. He released an open letter called "To All Those Who Treasured Monty Ohm." Suffice it to say, he detailed grievances that he had with the company, with Rooster Teeth in specific, and discussed how he was unceremoniously booted out basically before they could finish Volume 3. He basically just aired out all of his dirty laundry, and many people can basically agree he broke an NDA doing that. At least one NDA. Now, for those that don't know what an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement, meaning usually when you get hired on by a company, they make you sign some paperwork, and usually, sorry about the shaking, the laptop's literally on my lap. By the way, anyway, an NDA is something that a company will get you to sign, and that is the promise that you're not going to reveal their secrets, basically. That's usually what it boils down to. They don't want you yapping about projects they've got upcoming, or the inner workings of the company. Because corporate competition is a thing. So if corporate secrets got out, then another company could be like, well, this could be why they're more successful than us, so let's do that, That's super generalizing, and that is a generalization and a super simplistic explanation, but that's usually how it goes. Oh, and in case you're wondering about the weirdness of my notes, yeah, I'm going backwards on my notes. Page 1, page 2, and page 3. So I have 3 pages of notes. I believe this one was actually shorter than the Volume 1 video, but we'll see how that goes when we get there. Now, I've already talked about in my spoiler section of Volume 2 about how Raven Bronwyn was supposed to show up. For those don't recognize that name, that is the name of Yang's mom, and the woman who took off the mask, who was on the train and chased off Neo, and during the post-credit scene took off her mask and said, "Yang, we've got a lot to talk about." A scene that they retconned out of existence because Monty basically had to fight to get that scene in there, according to Shane's letter, and it really does kind of show that they retconned that scene out. So, whatever plan whatever the full-on original idea for Volume 3 was, we don't know. Okay? Now, I am trying to stick to just the facts when it comes to Shane's open letter, because I really do not want to come across as being mean to him. Because this was a man who was grieving over the loss of his friend, so it made sense that he would lash out. I think he was still in the moment even when he released this, because this was months after Volume 3 had wrapped up. So, had been released. And even in spite of all that, there were other behind-the-scenes problems with Volume 3. This is actually the start, Volume 3 right here, the third season, if you want to consider it that, was where we got issues out the wazoo, including the fact that the finale, End of the Beginning, which I'll talk about later, was rushed out the door, basically. It was done literally hours before the sponsors, now known as first members, were getting to see it. Not a good sign. I will have to look into some more of the behind-the-scenes stuff with Volume 4, admittedly, because I don't remember any real production issues with Volume 4. That being said, you can kind of tell that Volume 4 kind of had a large uphill battle. In fact, some people might even wonder why I'm bringing up Shane's letter now instead of in Volume 4. I wanted to get it out of the way because, honestly, I have to comment on it, and of course the behind-the-scenes stuff and the changed scenes. I've already discussed the Raven thing. I don't think she would have added anything. I think she would have honestly detracted, and considering what else they do to Team Juniper in this one, I don't think having Raven kick their asses would have added anything, my opinion. That, and I honestly think with the way the story is going, if she had fought Team Juniper in Volume 3, well, let's just say there would be even less of a chance that, what she tries to get Yang to do in Volume 5 would even happen. Spoiler alert, they actually meet up in Volume 5. But we'll discuss why it takes till Volume 5 when we discuss Volume 4. I don't know why I'm checking my notes right now. I don't actually have any notes about any of the real behind-the-scenes stuff. Although I will say that he did list the voice actor changes that happened, namely that originally Winter Schnee was not only going to be modeled after, but was going to be voiced by Monty's wife. And I didn't write down her name. I apologize for that. But by that point, the writing had been on the wall. Rooster Teeth was not interested in Monty's wife being a part of the series. And one thing that Shane really, really just was unable to cope with, whether out of respect for Monty, stubbornness, or both, let's face it, it's both. In my opinion, it's both anyway. He forgot the one critical thing. Okay? This was not always Monty's show alone. Okay? He created the series, he came up with the concept for the series, but this was always a Rooster Teeth IP. Now, that was his point. It had just become another Rooster Teeth IP. But if the writers had something interesting to tell, which admittedly, in my opinion, they don't outside of the Koryuri arc in the next 2 volumes, we'll talk about that later. The point is that it wasn't up to Shane or Monty's wife or any of that. It was up to the showrunners, and the showrunners at the time were Miles Luna, Carrie Shawgrass, and Gray Haddock. And I'm sorry, I did not actually mean to. If it, I did not mean for that to look like I was flipping you off. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. That was unintentional. But yeah, these three people, right? Right? Miles, Carrie, and Gray. I don't agree with Shane demonizing them, and that's all I have to say about that. Okay. Now, so for those and for those who don't recognize Winter's voice, did I mention that it was Winter that was supposed to be? Yeah, I think it was. Anyway, who we got instead was Elizabeth Maxwell as Winter. So, and I think she does a decent job. Not to mention, Winter kind of becomes superfluous. Now, I know that was mostly because Elizabeth Maxwell wasn't available for Volume 4, but again, I don't know how big of a part she would have had. And considering the way Winter was treated in this volume alone, yeah. We'll talk about that when we actually start going through my notes, but needless to say, I don't know. So let's get into the volume proper. Let's start on a very positive note. The opening scene with RWBY talking to her dead mother. I love that scene. I am going to be spitting so much vitriol and venom at specific characters in this volume, so I apologize in advance. But that opening scene was really great. The characters that I feel who get out of this volume with the least amount of damage, because nobody gets out of this undamaged, let's be honest with ourselves. There are multiple characters who get out of this without their characterization damaging them. Okay? Crow, Glinda, although nothing helps Glinda's characterization, I'll admit. Crow, Glinda, Winter, admittedly, though, that, and yes, I am going to be complaining about how she's used in here, but Winter does get out of here unscathed, for the most part. Because it's not her fault that she was unceremoniously told to piss off. Okay? So, Crow, Glinda, Winter, you know what, and I'm even going to say it, Oobleck, and Port. Those are like the 5 characters. Well, I guess we can consider Adam's character not damaged anymore here, any more than he already is. I mean, although to any of the Toradana shippers out there, well, then yeah, he got damaged here, but he came out with less damage than some characters I could mention, right? Whether it be physical or otherwise. And yes, I would put RWBY on that list too. Because RWBY has her whole worldview shaken, but not destroyed by this volume. I wish they had actually gone into more depth with that, gone more full tilt with that. And it's worthy of note that RWBY's voice actress Lindsay Jones is actually actively wanting that to be a thing. We'll see how that goes in Volume 6, because I can already tell you I've already failed on my plan to get these out before Volume 6 premieres. Because Volume 6, from my perspective, is in 8 days. So, yeah, not going to make that deadline, I don't think. Especially considering it's going to take me another 2 days to borrow Volumes 4 and 5 for viewing purposes, and if the same kind of crap happens next week as happened this week, I'm not going to get them out in time. But still, but getting back on track, I love the opening scene. It's a great scene. My next note is about the Vital Tournament structure. I'm not a big fan of how the Vital Tournament is structured rules-wise, though I do like one aspect of it. my main problem with the structure is that I like how it's designed. I just think two parts of it should have been in reverse. And I think that there should have been, it should have been no terrain, then terrain, the doubles, and then in the teams. I think it's that, I just gave away what I wanted, what I would have preferred. Do a singles combat, then doubles, then teams. Now, you might be tempted to look at me weird and be like, why? Well, it's teams, doubles, and then singles, right? Here's why I would have preferred that to be reversed. Okay, you have one-on-one fights. Simple enough. Simple concept. It's all down to the fighter's skills and their semblances and yada, yada, yada. Okay. Then the winner picks somebody from their team to partner up with in the doubles round. Okay. It's still the same kind of structure, but it's, it works better, in my opinion, because then you're adding to the difficulty rather than, to some, decreasing the difficulty, because then you don't have to keep track of as many enemies as you progress, right? Because you have to deal with 4 enemies and keep track of 3 allies in the first round. Then it's just 2 opponents and 1 ally in there, and then it's just focus on your opponent in the final. Now, you could say there are some characters that just work better in a group, and that's what that structure is all about. Well, that's why you reverse it, because then, in order to fully achieve victory in that final round, they have to work well with their team. And I hate to say this, but unity has been a pretty big frickin' theme. Specifically, the old phrase, united we stand, divided we fall. That's actually why Salem's theme song, for all intents and purposes, is a song called frickin' Divide, which is also the end credits song. That is not Cold. The rock out, like like the first song that plays during the credits. That's Divide. And that is, for all intents and purposes, Salem's theme. Give me 1 sec. Okay, sorry about that. Where was I? Oh, yes. The reason, like I said, reverse... Oh, okay, hang on, sorry. Sorry for any noise issues there, but... In fact, I'm going to push this out a little bit more. Again, sorry about the glare. This glare... You know what? Oh, yeah, that's right. I can adjust that. By toning it down a little bit. Sorry about that. Hey, guys. Hopefully this is better. Okay. Get that off my screen to stop distracting me. That's restore. Okay. Okay. Back to what I was saying. The Vital Festival tournament structure, the reason why, I would have preferred it to go from singles to teams is, again, that whole unity theme. It's kind of an unspoken theme that more or less, at first you're supposed to just kind of think about in the back of your mind. But it really becomes more and more apparent, especially when we get to volumes 4 and 5, where by the end of volume 5, everybody was like, oh, thank God. I won't spoil that, but... Well, actually, you know what? No, I won't spoil that here. I won't spoil that right now. Get off my screen so I stop getting distracted. But suffice it to say for now, the split up of Team RWBY that happens at the end of this volume, it kind of lasts a while. Spoiler alert, by the way. Alright, so my next note is RWBY versus RWBY. And yes, I wrote it down specifically because I wanted to make sure I was getting my facts straight. And yes, it's RWBY that they fight. Okay, I have to explain that because that is actually something I need to make clear. If you want an example of Rooster Teeth wasting their characters, look no farther than the characters that they introduced here in Volume 3. Now, whether or not Monty had any plans for these characters later down the road, I can't say. But there are so many characters that are just thoroughly wasted in this volume. Okay? Like Team Arbor, Team Bronze, Team Funky even, Team Coffee to a much smaller extent, but still, they're kind of wasted. The Fall Maiden Amber herself, completely pointless, superfluous by the end of it. And then there's other plot points where you think, oh, this is going to be somewhat important, or this is going to shift things, and then it ends up being dumb. In fact, I actually have a note about that later on, but we'll get there when we get there. Also, this is where I should point out that I don't actually think the fight choreography is really that bad here in Volume 3. It is noticeably lesser. I said this so weird in the rough draft. But, I do think the fight quality is lesser, but we have not gotten to peak what the fuck happened here kind of bad quality of fight scenes. You want an example of that? Well, we'll talk about that in Volume 4. So after Team RWBY wins, because of course they do, they encounter Emerald on the fairgrounds after acknowledging that, they're kind of hungry. So, comedy ensues. Yeah, there's a lot. The comedy in this volume is pretty hit or miss. In fact, there's one comedy bit that I am going to be ranting about. So, yeah. But we'll get there in a bit. So, Emerald shows up with holding Ruby's wallet, and Ruby kind of tries to play it off. Girl pockets are the worst. Yeah, no. I'm sorry. She stole that. We've actually seen her steal before, and it's off screen, but we hear her. I'll talk about that when we get there. We hear her stealing a diamond later. So yeah, no. And the main reason is they want to know what they're up against in the doubles round. Considering they have control of the randomizer, that just kind of makes me think that Miles and Carrie were kind of making this crap up as they went. Yeah, there's several times where the script of Volume 3 really feels like it needed a polishing pass. Not as bad as some episodes later down the line I could mention, and some lines I could mention. Salem using people until they are no longer useful, coming to mind immediately. Though, admittedly, that's because Colonel Ward just won't let that line go, but I don't blame him. Trust me, I don't. So my next two notes are all about Weiss. It still astounds me that Weiss seems to be like the one character that has a character arc in this series. You might think some other characters have character arcs, but no. The only one that really does is Weiss. Let's just be honest with ourselves here. Because she starts off as the Tsundere bitch, Volume 1 Weiss. One of these days I will stop bitching about Volume 1 Weiss, but, that's why I praised Volume 2, so the way Weiss was written in Volume 2, because it was clear. Volume 1 Weiss was gone. Gone. Get the hell out of here. We don't want you. Goodbye. Right? I ranted about that in my Volume 1 video, because even with the benefit of hindsight, in fact, hindsight actually made it worse, because it was just like, there was almost nothing. Like I said, they kept hitting the frickin' reset button in Volume 1. And then in Volume 2, they said, all right, let's actually progress. Because like I said, Monty had the better idea than George Lucas did. Because George Lucas just limited Jar Jar Binks' appearances in the prequel trilogy And what Monty did was he actually toned down Weiss's bitchiness. She didn't tone down Weiss's appearances, toned down her bitchiness, which showed progress, as in character development. Make sense? And of course, she decides she's going to pay for the meal. Okay, that seems nice. Nice and all. That shows progression. Here's the funny part. Yang even is like, "Oh, Weiss, what's the occasion?" And Weiss's response is, "Consider it thanks for sending me the doubles round." Yeah, this is gonna sound so stupid, but I call Paul on that, Weiss, for two big reasons. The first is, I think even at this point, Weiss cares about her team. It's pretty evident, and my second piece of evidence actually kind of supports that theory. And that's how the look on her face when her father is carting her away at the end, when Jacques the Destroyer takes her away. We got our first glimpse, that was our first on-screen glimpse of him, and oh boy, yeah, I took one look at that character design and I was like, I'm gonna hate you, aren't I? Admittedly, I don't hate him quite as much as the rest of the fan base does, but yeah, no. Yeah. Let's just say I'm in the camp that says that if it wasn't for Klein, well, Volume 1 Weiss would have been just Weiss. I don't need to tell you why that would be bad, do I? Speaking of Jacques the Destroyer, again, next volume. Speaking of Jacques the Destroyer, let's talk about Weiss's card being declined. Weiss claims that she was barely into her monthly allowance. Now, I can believe that, despite what some memes on the internet wanted to think. I can believe that, because Jacques, especially considering what we learn about him in Volume 4, oh boy, yeah, Jacques is kind of a dick. Spoiler alert, he's an asshole. And considering what I base my joke of Jacques the Destroyer in, well, it's not that hard to see why. Now, that being said, some people could say, well, he's just trying to convince Weiss to come home because it's dangerous out there, with the Grimm getting worse and yada, yada, yada. Oh, God. Okay, if you seriously believe that, by the way, do me a favor and watch Volume 4. I don't even remember what episode it is, but what episode was it? It's the episode where with the party that she goes to right after the concert. That thing where she accidentally summons the Borbatusk. Spoiler alert, she accidentally summons the Borbatusk she beat in Volume 1. And it's a minor enough spoiler, right? That party that she's at. Yeah. Watch that episode. Then you tell me. Especially if your vote was to kill in Detroit Become Human. With the father. Just saying. Anyways, I'm sorry for that. As I said, I'm trying to keep the spoilers for future volumes to an absolute minimum. But I need to point that out because I need you to understand the headspace of he's a dick. He does not deserve your sympathy. He does not deserve your whatever. He is a dick. Moving on. Because again, like I said, there's the huntress Weiss wants to be, there's the heiress that Jacques wants her to be, and then there's what she ends up being. So then Pyrrha shows up and decides that she's going to pay for the meal. I have to admit, I cannot. Wow, I need to. I have to ask myself what the hell I was high on, and when I did the rough version of this video, because I said something really frickin' stupid. If you'll forgive me for humiliating myself a bit here, I legit said, and I quote, "I guess it makes sense that Pyrrha is here." I'm just pointing that out because it's just like, the fuck was I smoking? I don't smoke, by the way. I don't. Regardless of certain laws that got passed up here, where now it's, well, let's just say there's a specific drug that has become like alcohol. I don't drink and I don't smoke. Fun fact, by the way. Hey, I love telling this story. I love humiliating myself like this. Fun fact, I used to have such a simplistic mind back when I was 7 that I made a vow when I was 7. I wasn't going to drink, and I wasn't going to smoke, and I wasn't going to drink. Now you might think, okay, well, that's understandable. You were health conscious when you were a kid. No, I wasn't. See, my reasoning was that I was under the stupid impression that if I swore off smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol, I'd be swimming in money like Scrooge McDuck. I just like to point out that I'd just like to point out that didn't happen. I'm not living in an elaborate mansion. I don't even have a proper computer setup. I am recording this off of my laptop, which I just barely managed to afford, and this is a freaking Acer that I bought from a place called iTech for $600. Yeah. Anyways, just as an aside. But of course, Pyrrha is a celebrity, so of course she would have the money. So then we get Nora's Freakout. Now this is interesting because I admit I was dumb when I first saw this. Because Nora's Freakout, she mentions, she talks about how the worst thing that could happen is, because she's basically describing her teammates, right? Describes Ren as a ninja, Pyrrha being a powerful warrior. Just pointed that out again. Let it go. And Jean, and she also claims that she can bench 5 of her. How much is Nora supposed to weigh again? Whatever, it doesn't really matter. But of course, and then of course, she then starts freaking out at the prospect of possibly losing, because then it's just a few more years of all of their peers knowing that they're losers. Their friends will slowly drift away to preserve their social status. Nobody will eat with them in the cafeteria. And then she points out 2 things that I want you to keep in mind for Volume 4. Ren and I have no parents and no home to go back to. Just keep that in the back of your mind for Volume 4. Because here's the funny thing. She's not lying. Or, to quote John, she's not wrong. Yeah. We'll discuss that when we discuss the one, in my opinion, the best written plot. I couldn't even think of the word for some reason as a thing. Now, speaking of Ren, to kind of segue this, let's talk about Neith. Neith Ohm, brother of Monty. I have to admit, I was one of those stupid people that noticed the dip in quality with Ren's voice acting, or perceived a dip in quality with Ren's voice acting. the reason why I'm groaning like that is that I'm more annoyed at myself because Neith has grown on me as a voice actor. I am not going to compare him to Monty because Neith does not compare himself to Monty. Or at the very least, in his performance, it feels like he does not do that, right? It feels more like Neith is taking Ren's character in his own direction. That is what he's... That is what it feels like Ren is trying to do. In my opinion, of course. So, yeah. I admit it took basically the entire first bit of Chibi, like the first season of Chibi, and Volume 3 to really hit it home. But Volume 4 was where I was on board with him being Ren. And then, of course, Volume 4 happened. Again, we'll talk about that later. So then my next note is the intro. I don't think I've really been discussing the intros very much, so let's talk about them now. I like pretty much every intro. A couple of them have had to grow on me, admittedly. Two of them in specific have had to grow on me, and then the other three, I just basically loved the song almost immediately. Admittedly, the Triumph from Volume 5 needed to grow on me a little bit, but it only took like 1 or 2 episodes before I was into it. You know, a few listens to it, and I was hooked. I was into it. The YouTube channel Flint of RWBY actually helped me with that, so shoutouts to him. He does lyric videos for some of the vocal songs. So oftentimes you will be able to hear, before the official soundtrack is released, you'll be able to hear the shortened version of whatever song on his channel. Rooster Teeth is a lot more loose. If you're wondering how he does that, Rooster Teeth is a lot more loose with its with copyright than some companies I could name, right? Cannot think of it because I don't want to call Square out on this, but I want to call, whatever the label company for. I can never get. If I butcher this, I apologize. Hikari Utada, I believe, the theme song singer for Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, her record company can go burn. That's all I really got. I mean, if you want me to order the intros, last place would be Let's Just Live. I'll discuss that more when we get there because I need to actually watch the shortened version again just to let it sink in. Then would actually be When It Falls. I mean, I like When It Falls, I really do. It's just the other three just are so much better in my opinion. Then you have the Triumph. What can I say? I love the Triumph. It's great. Then Time to Say Goodbye, and This Will Be the Day. Although those last two are very close in my opinion. But that is just me. Rant time. Because my next note is Juniper versus Bronze, aka character assassination. I admit I play a little fast and loose with the phrase character assassination. Usually when people say character assassination, they mean the character has been portrayed in a way that goes against everything that that character should be. What their character was perceived to be for however long. And in my opinion, this is why this is character assassination. for one very simple reason. Jean's authority is undermined, which has happened before by Pyrrha, but it's in like smaller ways, right? So it was less egregious, right? It was just Pyrrha, saying, let's go, instead of, Jean being the one to do that. It makes Pyrrha look like a dumbass in this scene, which just doesn't help. It makes Nora be a complete moron, and it will actually be contradicted by frickin' Volume 3. Volume 3 and Volume 5 really contradict Nora's character, and not in good ways. I'm just saying. Like, seriously, even in the previous volumes, Nora was smarter than this. So what the hell? And even Ren kind of has the idiot ball there for a second, because he's different. Well, okay, because he's thinking he has to incorporate a flower into the attack, and then Nora, of course, thinks that you throw flour at the enemy, like for baking, and I'm like, you see why I hate this? Because when they're actually fighting Team Bronze and not doing this stupid comedy bullshit, well, then it's actually interesting, right? It's actually fun. It's engaging. It's, the action's flowing. There's very few edits in this fight, right? Except for when it's got to cut away to show, different things or to change perspectives, which makes perfect sense. My favorite example is actually the sniper chick from Team Bronze. Like the cut, it shows Jean launch Pyrrha into the air, and then it cuts to the scope of Sniper Chick's rifle as she fires, and it hits Pyrrha's shield because they're trying to block the shot that's aimed at Nora. That's cool. That's great stuff. And then they completely screw it up. Jean calls for team attacks. All right, time for team attacks. Ren, Nora, flower power. Wait, what? Are you fucking kidding me? See, okay, here's my biggest problem with this and why I call it character assassination. It's too late. It's too fucking far into the series for them to be pulling this shit. Pardon my language. I'm going to be swearing a lot in this, by the way. I'm going to be swearing a lot in this in Volume 5. Volume 4, we'll see, because outside of maybe the ranting against Blake, I don't see myself swearing too much in the Volume 4 video. But here, oh boy. But yeah, like I said, it's too late. If they did this in Volume 2, that would have been the last. Volume 2 was like the last opportunity to do this. Okay. By the way, as an aside, in the off chance and he somehow ends up watching this, Miles, if you're watching this, this is not how to hide the fact that the Jean is self-insert. If he is, and if he isn't, this is not good writing. I hate to tell you this. This is not good writing. Now, there are some people who find this scene funny. I don't. It's a waste of time. And, yeah, considering how bad that gets later, not a good sign. Just saying. And then my next note is Sun versus Indigo. And my next I have actually 3 notes about this, but they're just the fight in general, Neptune's fear of the water, and Oobleck's bad joke. Let's tackle Sun being afraid of the water first. Okay, why did you introduce that? Especially considering you're unceremoniously just going to write him out of the show for 2 whole volumes, because, from what we understand, he's actually going to show up in Volume 6. Probably going to have a weak as crap role, but I'm just saying. And if you're thinking, oh no, he'll have a major part, you haven't been paying attention the past couple of volumes. I'm sorry to say. Now I could be proven wrong, admittedly, but volumes 4 and 5 do not show a vote of confidence there. Let's talk about it. So yeah, I don't. Neptune's Fear of the Water, no point. Although I will admit there is one part I should talk about because I didn't actually in the original cut of this, and I think it's more relevant. Blake was the one to point that out. Now, admittedly, Sun is a little more willy-nilly with the, hey, I know you're afraid of the water thing, but this is obviously something that would be embarrassing for Neptune. Let's just be honest with ourselves. It would be embarrassing for Neptune to have this, right? To be to have his name be Neptune, as in, I want to say it's the Roman god of the sea, and be afraid of the water. Like, that's actually the joke in RWBY Chibi. Ren dragging Neptune is just like, I don't get it. Your name is Neptune. How are you afraid of the water? And all I can think of is Ren's line from Volume 2. Thank you! I have pretty much nothing else to say about the fight. The fight had a good. That's how you do comedic. By the way, is the Sun versus Indigo fight. Oh, Weiss being like, "Good luck, Neptune," and then Neptune being like, "Ladies," when he notices. When he notices Team Indigo. When he looks at Team Indigo, it's like, yeah, no, Neptune, stop it. I mean, I may be the guy that thinks flirting should not be abolished, but even I have to admit I have my freaking limits. Even I have my limits of appropriateness, right? Let's talk about. So then Oobleck makes a bad joke where Port's like, you know what I would call that victory? And Oobleck's like, shocking? And Port's just like, no. Well earned. What you said is stupid. I think it's just funny. It's just kind of a funny idea. Alright, let's talk about Winter Schnee now. I have to admit, I've decided I want to try and come up with my own version of the Loriums, right? Maybe if this review series ever takes off, I might actually get my own website and actually come up with some stuff like that. So, let's discuss this. Let's discuss what I have decided to dub Awakening Effect. Now you might be like, what the funkin' Wagner does that even mean, Blue Wolf? Awakening Effect comes from Fire Emblem Awakening. Namely because Fire Emblem Awakening contained multiple characters that I was sure I was going to, either dislike or flat out hate. Okay? Frederick and Tharja being the two big ones that came to mind immediately, right? And admittedly, Emerin to some extent, though she quickly proved why there was no point to that. Frederick, on the other hand, kind of crept up on me, admittedly, because there was a point where Frederick, is like, I am super suspicious of you, Robin. And then, and then later down the road, he literally comes up, and I thought Frederick was still mistrusting of Robin, and then Frederick is one of the people that chimes in and says, get back up. Like, you can't let this be the end. And I was like, oh. Go, Frederick. In fact, I actually thought I was going to hate Lissa, too, because of her voice. I'm not a fan of Kate Higgins. I'm sorry. I'm not a fan of Kate Higgins. Moving on. But yeah, as Lyssa, I think she does fine. Even in Warriors, I think she does fine. But anyway, to get back on point, that was the point. I constantly had that there were characters that I thought I was going to not like, and I ended up liking them. By the way, if my eyesight veers off, well, you're about to see in a second. Well, you saw for a second there actually. Yeah. Go away, cat. I'm recording. Go away. Sorry. Just my sister's cat. Anyways. Jeez. Anyways, to get back on point, Winter very much feels like she is a great example of awakening effect. Where now, awakening effect does not work with Weiss. See, because Weiss took an entire volume and a half before I finally started liking her. Right? Awakening effect is more or less when I start liking them almost immediately. Because Frederick, at the very least, had good reason for distrusting Robin. And and Awakening Effect was just reinforced later down the line, right? That was what I liked about Winter. Winter, at first, I thought I was going to hate because I didn't hate Weiss at this point. I actually liked Weiss as a character at this point. So when Winter smacks her after Weiss is listing off her social status, I was like, what the heck? And then she starts explaining why she slapped her. No, I didn't ask about your social status. I asked, how are you doing? Are you eating properly? Getting enough sleep? Keep training right? Admittedly, I think she goes a little too far with the eyewitness 3 missed strikes thing, but whatever. She's military, so of course she would be strict like that. So, let's talk about the character that instantly became my favorite character, and remains so for up until the end of Volume 4, and admittedly, a little bit into Volume 5. Shall we? Crow Bronwyn. I have to admit, Crow is one of those characters where I absolutely adore everything about him. And this is the start of them getting really big actors in. Elizabeth Maxwell, as I said, as Winter, and I always butcher this name. Vic Mignogna? God, I hope I'm saying that right because I love his voice acting. I'm just going to refer to him as Vic from now on because I don't want to continuously butcher his name. So when I'm speaking about Vic, I'm speaking about, you know who I'm speaking about, okay? Now, if that name is unfamiliar to you, well, if you've seen almost any anime ever in the past, I want to say, about 20 years, you've heard him. You've heard his vocal talents, okay? Just to name a few of his more famous roles, other than Crow, he was Broly in the Dragon Ball franchise and will be Broly in January. I'm super excited for that. I'm trying to think of what other roles he was in. Oh, come on, Vic. What else were you? Who else were you? Because I don't want to jump on the obvious one. I know you're all screaming the obvious one at me, but I wanted to name at least a couple. Give me one sec. Okay, sorry about that. I needed to look up his behind the voice actors page. page. So yes, he was of course Broly in the Dragon Ball franchise, slash is still Broly. Boy, I hope his voice survives the Super movie. Yeah. Anyway, so he's Broly. He also was the replacement for I don't know the voice actor's name, but he was the replacement for Matt from Digimon in Digimon Adventure Tri. And he was also Christopher in Digimon Fusion, for any of you who've seen that. Of course, this is me beating around the bush because I wanted to name at least a few others. He is most famous for playing Edward Elric in Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah. So, there's that. So, then Crow starts being antagonistic, because he's drunk. Okay. Anyway, then Crow. So Crow is provoking Winter, and Winter's just like, I don't have time for your immature games, Crow. Yada yada yada. And then he starts insulting Ironwood, and Winter decides that she's going to attack him. Okay. If anybody out there who knows this series can give me a good explanation as to why Winter pulls this kind of stupidity, feel free to share it with me. Because I can't understand what the hell she's thinking. Because, okay, first of all, you're making a scene in public. You're reacting on emotion when you're a military personnel. And you're not exactly helping with the whole is Atlas invading thing. So why the hell? I mean, I know if she didn't react violently, well, then we wouldn't have this epic fight scene, which admittedly is one of my personal favorite fight scenes in the entire series, and is my favorite fight in this volume, absolutely. But, yeah. Now, admittedly, there are some good fight scenes in here. I'm not going to deny that. I don't personally think Cinder versus Pyrrha is one of them, but I do like Pyrrha versus Penny, despite how that ends. And I do like... I think there was one other that I enjoyed. Sorry. I do admittedly like Yang versus Mercury. Though I'm not a fan of how that one ends either, for obvious reasons, but we'll discuss that when we get there. I am going to talk about that note later and just skip it for the time being. But yes, there is a reason for Winter being able to use the glyphs. We'll discuss that in a bit. So, my next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes are all about this next scene. Namely, Crow being called up to Ozpin's office. There is a bit of another scene that I find absolutely hilarious, and that's when RWBY hangs off of Crow's arm. With the whole, did you miss me? Did you miss me? Nope. And then Ozpin's just like, Crow, a word, please. He doesn't really say it with as much anger in his tone as I do, but that's because he's not mad. He's just annoyed. And then Crow's just like, I think I'm in trouble. And then Ruby's just like, well, you did kind of tear up our courtyard. Yeah, I did. Catch you later, kiddo. And I like that little fist bump that he does with Ruby. That's cute. I like that. I really do. And then, of course, Weiss has to comment on it, because of course she does. And suddenly your recklessness makes sense. And then Ruby's just like, you're just mad because he whooped butt. That was a draw at best. Oh, that scene. And then we get this scene. Rant mode engaged once again. Winter literally legit asks him, it's just like, what were you thinking? And then Ironwood chimes in with, if you were one of my men, I'd have you shot. Okay, first, Winter started the fucking fight, as I already pointed out. Note 2, you're the one that frickin' retaliated like a moron in Winter, which is actually Glinda's point. So Glinda has actually got more of a brain than you two do. That's fucking saying something. And 3, yeah, I'm sorry, Ironwood. You drag your entire fucking army to Vale, you put an invasion fleet in the fucking skies, and you undermine Ozpin's authority, basically taking his kingdom from him. What he's thinking is that you're a bunch of invading assholes. That's what he's thinking. And then when Glinda points out that retaliating like Winter did was stupid, but she's just like, he was drunk. He's always drunk. Okay, that stupid comedy bit. But here's the thing. Just ignore him. Just ignore him. Just be like, look, I got a meeting with the general. Look, I've got things to do, Crow. So, so either get to your point or move on. Or you could just say, well, there was a there was a breach of Grimm that Ozpin failed to contain. So that Ozpin's men failed to contain. So, keep it a verbal argument with back and forth. Don't whip out your sword and start swinging. Whatever. That's why I say it's so stupid, because I'm sorry, Ironwood should be yelling at Winter for her fucking actions too. In my opinion, Winter is just as fault as Crow is. Crow pushed Winter's buttons. That was admittedly not something he should have done. Okay, fine. Whatever. But letting it get to you and proving that the Atlas military are prone to emotional outbursts of violence was not fucking helping. Now, was it? I'm sorry that I'm getting so angry at this, but I am legit pissed off at this. Okay. So then, Ironwood points out that Crow's been out of contact for weeks, and says you can't just go dark in the field. Okay, I have 3 major problems with this. 1, why did you let him go dark? Why did you just cut him off? Why did you just cut communication with him? What the fuck was the point of that? You cut him off okay, this is such a simple solution. I said in the last one that this solution that I came up with, I pulled out of my ass weeks before even making that. Okay? Like, Crow pulls out his phone, or his scroll. It's scroll, phone, same thing, right? He points at a button and he says, you see that? That's the send button. Okay, the timing of that was just brilliant. One sec. Don't want that. Anyways, but yeah, he pulls out the phone and he says, that's the send button. Communication is a two-way street. But here's the problem. But here's why this is so stupid. Because the solution I came up with was simple. It's like, okay, you whip out your scroll because Crow's been out of contact for a while. You just simply text him like, "Hey, Crow, haven't heard from you in weeks. You okay, bro?" Send. All right, so then you put it out of your mind and just wait for him to contact you again. And if it takes another week, you send a couple of men. You send like 3 people, right? Excuse me, 3 of your people to just go and do it. Oh my goodness, excuse me. You could even get Ozpin to just send some people to go see him, right? To go see it, right? Now Ozpin was probably like, "I'm not too worried because it's Crow," but even just to send a couple of people to check up on him, right? Or even just send Tai Yang to go and try and find him, right? He's been dark in the field for weeks. Here, please go track him down, right? It's simple, it's effective, and I'm sorry, a family man seeking out his brother-in-law, that's not going to really raise too much suspicion. But whatever. Ironwood's a moron. Moving on. So then after the phone shenanigans, Ironwood gets Winter to leave, and my sister's cat decides to show up again. Anyways, Winter leaves, and then Crow does some clumsy exposition. We're not just teachers and headmasters. The people in this room, the headmasters of the other 2 schools, are all part of an inner circle, right? And then he goes to Ironwood and is just like, "So you tell me, James, when you dragged your army to Vale, did you think you were being subtle, or did you just not give a damn?" No, Crow, the real answer was he had the idiot ball shoved way too fucking far up his ass. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't use the idiot ball concept like that, but... And I know somebody's got to be dumb for this for your story to be a thing, but I'm sorry. If it was just a couple of mistakes, I could be like, well, okay, he was complacent. Simple mistake. But it's too much. He's made too many goddamn mistakes, right? The army in the frickin' skies. Hey, special soldiers that'll fight at the drop of a hat. You usurping Ozpin's authority, that's the one that pisses me off the most. Because why... It was an elaborate scheme by the White Fang. Like, I'm sorry, does the council think that Ironwood's policy of bring entire army, sweep the enemy, and win? Because, okay, Ironwood's tactical solution here is crap ton of soldiers, crap ton of mechs, crap ton of robots, that's a crap ton of ships, and then win. And a cat going across it that isn't taking the hint of, "I don't want you on screen, go." God damn it, cat. Sorry. But, that's his point, right? But that's his strategy. So why is it that somebody like me, whose tactical prowess basically ends at beating Fire Emblem Awakening on hard casual, or normal classic, if you prefer that is being actually harder, why am I able to outsmart him and just look at this? Now, any other enemy, that would have made sense. That would have been at least understandable. But Cinder is not a conqueror trying to trample the kingdom of Vale. This is a schemer that is trying to take it apart piece by piece by piece. Actually, I have a better way to visually demonstrate this. Cinder is a schemer that is trying to take it apart. This is a keychain a friend gave me. I'm not even that big into Minecraft, but Cinder's trying to take Vale apart piece by piece by piece by piece by piece. This, now if Cinder was trying to just to take it apart all at once, then Ironwood would actually have would actually have a point. But that's not what Cinder's trying to do. Cinder is trying to take it apart piece by piece, to tear it apart from the inside out. But of course, Ironwood, and I love that. I love one part of that is that Crow will literally say that Ironwood, that's what Ironwood can't get through his thick skull. Oh, Cinder is a schemer. He's not making Vale safer. Something is up, and he's just sitting on his laurels, resting on his laurels. I am going to really have to pay attention to Ironwood's dialogue in Volume 4, because something tells me, when I go through it, something tells me he's going to be, In fact, that's literally my next note, Ironwood being a moron. Because like I said, this is not a conqueror villain you're trying to take down. This is a schemer. So then my next two notes are literally the lines that point out why Ironwood's a moron. Because he points out with his army, with his invasion fleet. Yes, I am still calling it that, because I don't care. That's what it fucking is. In any other setting, it would be seen as an invasion fleet. In fact, Ironwood... You know what's stupid? Ironwood's actions actually would have made more sense if Ironwood had been ousted as the traitor. I'm not going to name names about who the traitor is, but yeah, spoiler alert, there's a traitor in Ironwood's inner circle, or Ozpin's inner circle. Yeah. And it really should have been frickin' Ironwood, in my opinion, because that would have actually made some semblance of sense. I mean, yeah, it probably would have made things a lot harder, but it probably would have at least helped. Or even two people. One because of his reason, and the other because he was dissatisfied with the way Ozpin did things. But whatever, moving on. Because you see, the thing is, and then Ironwood is like, when the people look up to the sky and see my ships, they feel safe, and our enemies will feel our strength. It's the exact I hate to tell you this, Ironwood, but it's the exact human nature means it's going to be the exact opposite of that. Namely, your enemies are going to feel safe because you're too busy being a goddamn moron, and the people are feeling your strength. I actually wrote down the two parts of this. Yes. A guardian is a symbol of comfort, but an army is a symbol of conflict. There's an aura in the air now, and a question on the back of everyone's minds, which is my next point. If this is the size of our defense, what are we expecting to fight? And that's best case scenario, by the way, of them just wondering what the hell that we're expecting to fight. Because, I mean, I don't want to really get too much into this, but are you telling me that there are literally no conspiracy theorists at all in Remnant? Really? I find that incredibly dubious. It just... Really? Ugh. But whatevs. So then Mercury, who's noticed Crow and Winter fighting earlier, reports back to Cinder. So, yeah. Crow... So Crow is recognized by Mercury. Okay, that's neat. And he gets out of there quickly. I like that because Mercury probably will... Cinder and her group really should avoid avoid Crow as much as possible in case he ends up recognizing them. Just saying. Because he only got that quick glimpse and then they were out of there. But really... Excuse me. But really, that would be the smart thing. Of course, Mercury's going to do something incredibly dumb later, but whatever. So then they get a new access point, which also will later actually reveal Penny's schematics to her. Yeah, apparently destroying Penny was not originally part of the plan. Shrug. I mean, it's a good addition at least, but whatever. Then it's revealed that Cinder has control of the randomizer. This was one of the things that made me debate whether or not to call the Black Queen virus the Mary Sue virus, because it does do a lot of crap. Gives them inside info, gives them access points. I mean, the whole shebang, really. Control the randomizer. I've decided to not do that because I'm going to assume that it just gives them access to manipulate things. So they, basically gives them an access point that lets them manipulate all this stuff. So it's not the virus doing it, it's just giving Cinder Scroll the capacity to do it. That's the headcanon I'm going with because otherwise, yeah, it's pretty much the Mary Sue virus. And speaking of the Mary Sue concept, yeah. This is my thought. That was what was going through my head the entire time Mercury and Emerald were fighting Coco and Yasuhashi. Why? Because Yasuhashi gets one hit that does nothing to Mercury, and that's it. Really? Just really? Coco gets no hits. I don't think Coco gets any hits. If she does, she gets like one hit on Mercury. And even then, everything else is just blocked, is either blocked or dodged. I mean, I guess you could count it as, the block isn't so bad. I want to remind you that Mercury has mechanical legs. So that's not impressive. That's cheating. Not literally, because, his boots are counted as his weapons, so shrug. But I just really don't like that fight at all. Except for the fact that talking about that fight now means I'm on page 2 of my notes. But that's about it. Oh, and then we get an example of Emerald's OP semblance. See, this is why I call Mercury and Emerald Mary Sue's, because there's no... The more it feels with them, the less interesting it feels. The less I like, right? The less it feels like we could get a proper defeat for them, right? Like, for example, we are still going to be dealing with Emerald and Mercury as of Volume 6, just as an aside. Spoiler alert. So, yeah. I really don't have anything else to say. It was such a boring fight. The only thing I liked about that fight was the song that played. I'm the One is awesome, but Jeff Williams is awesome, so what do you want from me? So the note I had last time was about hereditary glyphs, because we get Winter and Weiss talking. And then Winter decides that she is going to try and help Weiss with her summoning, because Weiss has gotten better with a good chunk of the aspects. Sorry, I'm trying to reposition my laptop here. Weiss has gotten better with her glyphs. She's good with the push, with the pull, with the platform, and with time dilation. She even mentions, I've already started time dilation. That was the glyph she used on Blake in order to make her like super fast so she could slice all those missiles. Yeah. Sorry, Matt. Friend of mine. Sorry, Matt, but yeah, no. Yeah. This is time dilation is actually the thing that made Blake super fast in Volume 2. It wasn't Ruby's semblance. I mean, I guess it could have had something to do with it, but to my knowledge, Ruby's semblance is just she can go fast. She's Sonic the Hedgehog, basically. And then we learn about the ability to summon. Now, I like the idea of a semblance that it is the same kind of things, but each member of the Shini family can do something different with it. So, for example, Weiss is the only one that can summon summon the Knight from the White trailer, and a certain Grimm from Volume 5. Because she is the one that defeated those. Likewise, the Beowulf that appears behind Winter when she demonstrates the summoning glyph, only Winter can summon that specific Beowulf because it's one that she defeated. Makes sense? I don't know how the glyphs calculate that, but whatevs. It's a neat concept, and honestly, I wish the other glyph powers were a little more utilized. Cough, cough. Time dilation. Cough, cough. We also get that intermixed with her training. Winter trying to train Weiss for summoning. Summoning is also interjected with a scene with Crow. We get some comedy bits of where he's talking about I was on a mission to gather info, so I went into this bar and I was instantly defeated by the innkeeper's skirt length. And then Yang being like, "You are the worst." And video games in Remnant. Of course there would be. I mean, it's Rooster Teeth, for crying out loud. If you know Rooster Teeth's history, then you know why that is. So then Crow talks about having graduated and by being a part of Team Stark. Like I said, I want a Stark flashback, and that's mostly because of the photo he shows. That's where I met your parents. Team Stark. Now, I like that he kind of covers Raven's face a bit with the photo. And yeah, I do have to agree with the joke of, oh wow, Winter is just Ruby with with a white cloak. Okay. But I still would love to see Team Stark in their heyday. What led to Raven being a bitch? Spoiler alert. What drove Raven apart? What kept Crow? What made Crow decide to stay away? What happened to Summer Rose? I want to know all this stuff. So then he delivers a form of Monty's motto. Don't think for a second that graduating from this place means you're done. And a day out there is worth a week in this place. You're gonna go. You two are gonna go far as long as you never stop learning, never stop growing, and never stop moving forward. That to me is more what Monty's motto, what it feels like Monty's motto should be, or how it should be interpreted. My opinion, but that's just the way I see it. That's the way I personally interpret Monty's motto. My next couple of notes are about Penny, because I forgot to talk about Penny having a soul. Because in Volume 2, Ruby because Penny's all freaking out and basically saying, I'm not a real girl. And then Ruby just kind of points out, of course you're real. You have a soul. I can feel it. And aura, as it was described, the reason why the Grimm don't have aura is because they don't have a soul. They're soulless. That is why Ruby disagrees. Of course you've got a soul. You have aura. And that's actually why I look at it, how I look at it. Of course you have a soul, Penny. You have aura. You can't have an aura without soul. Without a soul. But whatevs. Now, the part I would like to say is, by this point, it's obvious she has sentience and sapience. Where what Laura calls droid effect, where, a droid in Star Wars doesn't start sentient and sapient, but they, once enough experience is racked up, they actually will be able to gain sentience and sapience. I would argue Volume 2 was where she had that sentience and sapience. But Volume 1 was where she had just started to gain it, and then her interactions with Team RWBY, her multiple reactions to Team RWBY, fighting Roman at the docks, really kind of helped build her into her own. So then by Volume 2, she was sufficiently sentient and sapient enough to be like, okay, I gotta protect RWBY from the truck. So then she talks about, now the reason I say it here is that she apparently has a plan for staying at Beacon, because she wants to stay at Beacon. She wants to stay around RWBY. And of course, RWBY's just like, they won't let you. And then Penny's just got a plan. It makes me wonder what that plan was. This is actually one of the reasons why, my personal opinion, and I know there's some that disagree with this, but I don't want this to be the permanent end of Penny. I want Penny to come back. And yes, I want it to be the Penny, not Penny 2, different soul. I want this to be Penny, right? Penny QT. And then if that form gets destroyed, upgrade her again. Penny QT Pie. If you don't get the reference, I'm referencing Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But yeah. Again, it's one of those plot points where it just feels like you really should go somewhere with that, but it feels like they're not going to. I guess we'll see in a couple of volumes, but because I doubt Volume 6 is going to touch on this, but the fact that Penny only is going to get one mention in Volume 5 just bugs me. Well, outside of the aesthetic choice, but I'll talk about that when we talk about the new outfits in Volume 4. So then we get RWBY versus Funky, which I have nothing to really say, except good music, but man, Flint and Neon Cat are just irritating to me. Sorry. I know I keep moving the camera. It's because I keep slouching and then my leg goes down. Sorry about that. Anyway, see, the point here is, how do I want to put this? Flint, it looked like Flint was going to kind of be, could at least have layers to him. And of course, Neon Cat, could have been like an interesting eccentric character. But they just come across as like antagonistic, like overly antagonistic. I get it, doing a little bit of trash talk during the fight, but it feels like it goes too far. Because Neon Cat, all throughout the fight, just before the fight starts, Neon Cat makes a fucking boob joke. Really? A fucking boob joke? And then she makes an ass joke. When she freezes Yang's leg. Oh, look, now you're bottom heavy. Yeah, that's an ass joke. You want to know how I can tell? Because Neon Cat fucking slaps her own ass when she fucking makes it. Why? Whatever. I really have nothing to say. I just do not enjoy that fight. I'm sorry. Ugh. But at least no character in that fight feels like a Mary Sue. Although I will admit I like Flint's semblance killer quartet. That was cool. And of course there's also the joke from Port. Ooh, looks like Yang is angry. And you wouldn't like her when she's upset. Like he was scared he was going to get copy wronged or something. So then we get Ozpin bringing Pyrrha up to his office to talk about the maidens. This is actually one of the reasons why I hate that the rough draft came off as bad as it was, because I basically explained my point with magic perfectly, in my opinion. To reiterate, in my opinion, the introduction of the maidens was a mistake. It's the show's biggest mistake. Let me explain. See, I have to agree with people who ask the question, how is magic different from semblances and dust use? See, if you're going to introduce magic into a setting, you have to do it very carefully. Because otherwise, you get what lore refers to as magic! Or as he will call it, type 2 magic, right? Or to put this in more perspective that you might be more familiar with, the headspace of the writers is, it's magic, we don't have to explain it. Now, if you craft magic properly, then you get what lore will call type 1 magic. Or as I will define it, it's magic, I don't have to explain it, but I'm going to anyway. Basic ideas of magic, like flinging fireballs around and everything. Here's the problem. Dust is a thing. It can be woven into fabric. That's actually something that Ironwood brings up in Volume 2. Ooh, weaving dust into fabric is an age-old technique. It could have been anyone, But that's the thing. Magic needs to be something much more, because semblances are literally going to be described as a superpower. And the example I used last time was actually a series that differentiates magic from energy attacks perfectly, in my opinion. And that was Dragon Ball Z. Okay? Dragon Ball Z differentiates... Excuse me. Whew. Might actually have to lay down after this. That would be partially why. But anyway. Dragon Ball Z, right? In Dragon Ball Z, you have a distinct difference between magic and energy attacks. For example, Majin Buu's chocolate beam turns you into chocolate so they can eat and kill you. That way, right? It's a horrible way to go, but, I'm just describing it, right? His chocolate beam looks different than Goku's Kamehameha, for example. So you can see that as magic, and the other thing as energy attacks. Now, whether or not Frieza's psychokinesis thing is magic, I'll leave that up to you. But frickin' hell, come on. Ugh, sorry, but but that's a way to differentiate it, right? Magic has different properties and different rulings. Now, granted, so for example, your turn to chocolate or candy or whatever, with Boo's energy beam, but energy attacks usually are just you're flinging enemy energy at your opponent. It's much more straightforward. Magic in Dragon Ball can do much more than energy attacks, right? Though you can concentrate energy attacks in different forms, you're still flinging energy around. So a Kamehameha is similar to a death beam, right? Makes sense? That's usually why in some of the Dragon Ball Z games, for example, you can actually have a beam struggle with Frieza's death beam. And it's still called a beam. So, makes sense? But in RWBY, you've already got semblances and dust. And that just bugs me. I mean, I get it. It's elemental attacks without dust, but it really just comes across as really. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of introducing magic into the setting, and the fact that the mains are basically just gonna be plot devices. This is from here on out. I'm also not a fan of that. Which leads me into my next point, timescale. Now, lore, excuse me, voice crack. The lore runner has constantly stated, that he is not that he constantly makes fun of the 10,000 years concept. In other words, what he calls Doctor Who syndrome, with writers not understanding the sense of scale. I don't fully agree with Doctor Who syndrome in its entirety, because, I mean, okay. I also prefer tales to stories, and I'll have to explain that. But basically, a story is something that's believable, and a tale is just there to kind of make a point, right? Make sense? A lot of times I will prefer tales to stories, or at the very least, some integration of the two. So something could have, say, aspects of a story, but still be a tale at the end of the day. Star Trek being a great example of this. I like Star Trek, but Star Trek would definitely fit into the tale category, right? Most anime would actually fall into the tale category too, especially shonen shows. One Piece is a great example of that, although that is a lot more believable than say something like like a setting like Fairy Tail, for example, or the Dragon Ball franchise, for example. But yeah, the time scale with Remnant does actually bug me, because the mains have apparently existed for thousands of years. Okay, here's why that bugs me. And it has everything to do with what we learn in Volume 5. I'm not going to go into too great a depth, but yes, Volume 5 screws this up. Because the mains having existed for thousands of years would have been okay, except God freaking damn it, body. Come on. Just stop. Ugh. Sorry. The time scale bugs me here because I liked the idea of Remnant being a relatively young setting in terms of how long it's existed. I would I would argue that 3,000 years really should have been the amount of time that it existed, right? Or if you wanted to get technical, 10,000. Let's just up it to 10,000, right? At most. Now, 10,000 still would have crap tons of problems, as would 3,000, admittedly, but it would have been a lot more understandable, right? Now, granted, then you would have to introduce the idea of a creator god to explain how humans got here, or do some kind of like dimension crap to tie it in with red versus blue. Actually, that would have been cool to do, but again, apparently, what's the name of the studio? Not Bungie, but the studio that took over Halo. You know, they would have to approve that apparently because red versus blue is partially their product. Yeah, suddenly putting Shane's whole it's not Monty's series anymore stuff into perspective, doesn't it? Anyways, it's you know the thousands of years thing is just bugging me because remember this current era is only 80 years old. Now, honestly, I would have been more okay with it if they had done the whole God fucking damn it. If they had done the if they had basically increased the amount of time the the peace age that remnant that ends with volume 3 lasted. But that's just me. I don't really have much else for it. It just bugs me. It's similar to how in Fire Emblem there's a time scale that bugs me there too. Namely the span of time between Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, the very first game, the very first story, if you prefer, and Fire Emblem Awakening, which is the second farthest into the timeline, if you want to consider it one big cohesive timeline that exists. It's 2,000 years instead of what I thought it would be, which was 1,000. Like, why not make Marth the first Exalt? Then you would have a double meaning for why why, spoiler alert, Lucina dons the mask and pretends to be Marth. Smash Brothers has already ruined that. Sorry. And it's not honestly that big of a reveal. I just won't go into too grave of detail of everything else. So the question now is, why the secrecy? Now, up to this point, that makes a lot of sense. But at this point, yeah, now it's understandable because their reasoning is that the other nations would, there would be war, right? Except, and this is why I say it's a mistake, because now you've introduced something that is being kept secret, and once it gets out, that's it. The setting, you see, the problem is that there will always be corrupt individuals that will want to utilize the maiden powers for themselves, unless you find a way to eliminate maiden powers for good. Or, in the case of something I'll talk about more in volume 5, rather. Yeah. Making it so that there aren't maidens. Just gonna leave that there. So as they're explaining all about the maidens to Pyrrha, she accepts the idea that she will, to become the next Fall Maiden in order to, because that way they know who the Fall Maiden is. Although I do admit, and my note even says this, that while she accepts without full details, they do continue to explain. And I like that because they want to make sure that that Pyrrha understands, one, there's a chance this isn't going to work. Two, this is extremely new territory for all parties involved. And three, well, you're mixing auras. So what the hell is that going to do to Pyrrha? Right? Now, Pyrrha also points out that if Ember dies, well, wouldn't that just transfer the powers to the next host? Now, under normal circumstances, yes. The problem is that it's possible that the powers will just, her half of the power will just seek out its other half, which it does seem to end up doing, though that's admittedly up to interpretation. But moving on. So then we get Yang versus Mercury. I'm moving on pretty quick through these. So, like I said, good fight. I like it. And then the semblance thing happened. I admit I looked away from this because I was just like, nope, I can't watch this. I know exactly what's going on. And it's like, there won't be a next time, Blondie. And then seems to like lunge kick at Yang. And then that's when Yang fires off Ember Celica on his leg. The problem is that Mercury wasn't flying through the air. He was sitting on the ground. So what everybody else saw was Yang attacking Mercury for seemingly no reason. This is going to create a really annoying issue for me in a bit, but for now, yeah. Oh, and the Grimm start stirring. Because of course they do. Which is the other reason why Ironwood's fleet is stupid, by the way. You're causing fear in the hearts of the people. Fear that can be fed on by the Grimm. Moron. So my next note is beginning of the end, aka the flashback. Ugh, excuse me. Now, I have to admit, there's way too much laziness in this episode, in this part of the volume, in this episode, chapter, whatever you want to call it. A lot of it is blank screen with voiceovers. So annoying. Now, admittedly, the voiceovers do actually help, but it really paints Cinder's motives, as really cliche, right? I want to be strong. I want to be feared. Like, okay, and here's hoping that Salem's motives are much more clearly defined. Sorry about that. I'm in a basement, so ambient noise is going to be a thing. So then she recruits Emerald, she recruits Mercury. She tries to recruit Adam, but he refuses it first. The last time he'll have any competence to him. Then they go and fight Amber. They kick Amber's ass. I mean, at least that one looked like they at least were. At least it felt like the villains were actually in danger during the fight with Amber. But again, cheap shots, whatever. Remember, I'll talk about that more in a minute. And then, the flashback ends and we go back to modern day. And apparently the red dress was actually gained from her dress was transformed when she got the powers? What? And then she got apparently a marking on her back too. That is never explained to my knowledge. as an aside. So then my next note is about wasted voice actor potential and talent. Yeah, I mentioned that I didn't actually mention. Yeah, Winter is told that she needs to leave, but it says that she's leaving. And my only question is to that is, why is Ironwood doing that? But yeah. But even more so is in two voice actors in particular. Elizabeth Maxwell being wasted can be debated. In my opinion, there's no debating that Laura Bailey, who plays Amber, and Travis Willingham, who will play some random captain on a ship on one of the Atlas ships that gets shot down, are just thoroughly wasted in their roles because there's no point. There's no meat behind their performance. It's just here's this military dude with Travis Willingham, and then Amber is really just there to get her ass kicked, battle grunts, and then please to beg for her life, please don't. Really? Ugh, but whatever. So then we get the aftermath of Yang's framing, of Yang being framed. After, of course, Cinder tells Mercury to lay low, which he'll disobey because, of course, he will. Because, meh. Anyways, we get Ironwood trying to be fair because he's trying to say that yes, he's trying to say that that Yang had no malicious intent. He's trying to believe that. However, however, ever, and of course her teammates are trying to be fair to her, but here's the problem. Okay, here's the problem. Blake's line. All of the others look at when Yang goes like, "You guys believe me, right?" to her team, and Ruby's just like, "Yeah, of course, duh." And Weiss even chimes in and says, "You're hot-headed, but not ruthless. Something is definitely up." And then Blake chimes in with an admittedly understandable line, but one that just kind of makes me go, ugh. I want to believe you. And I'm just like, really, Blake? Ugh. Now, her reasoning does make sense. She talks about Adam again and how he started off fine, and it was gradual, and then just gets Yang to look her in the eye and say, okay, just tell me that he attacked you first. She does it, looks her straight in the eye and says that, and Blake says, okay, then I will believe you. Which actually leads me into my next point. Why the fuck does nobody but her team why the fuck does nobody but her team believe Yang is innocent on this? Admittedly, the general public not being on Yang's side, I get that. That actually makes some sense. Okay? Why is Ironwood thinking she was just seeing things? Why is Crow saying that she's either lying or she's crazy? That pisses me right the fuck off. I'll talk about that in a minute. And just see the problem. My biggest issue here is if anybody should believe Yang, it should be Ozpin's inner circle, right? Because they've been exposed to magic, real, honest to goodness magic. Why are they not believe? And that actually leads me into my next note here. No illusion semblances ever, really? Now I could understand there not being one in the past 80 years, But are we seriously saying that there's never been one ever in the history of Remnant? This was another reason why I wanted Remnant to be young, because at least then this would have made a little bit of more sense. But if it's multiple thousands of years, then this is bullshit. In fact, fans have actually pointed out one way that this is dumb, and I didn't even think of this, admittedly, whether even back when I watched this for the first time, or now, Neo. Neo throws this whole thing out the freaking window. Now, I know the idea is that it's an illusion based upon her being, but are we really... Am I really supposed to believe that there's nobody that can manipulate mental... to have powers over mental capacities? Like, nobody knew Emerald's semblance? She didn't have to record that? Like, what was her semblance recorded as before? Or being a snarky bitch? Like what the fuck? That just bugs the shit out of me. Like, okay. Here's how I would have done it. First of all, Ozpin's inner circle knows about illusion powers. However, they offer a... God damn it, I can't stop yawning. Anyways, but then they offer a side thing. Or at least trying to be fair, right? Like, pretend like, okay, we have to disqualify you, public opinion, yada, yada, yada. Okay, right? Why not, though, in private, look at Yang and just be like, we know you didn't do this. Like, have Ironwood or Crow or even Ozpin himself to come down and say it and just be like, we believe you. We believe that you were framed. We can't prove it, and we can't even elaborate on how we know, but we know you're innocent. Innocent. Tell us about exactly what happened so that we have an idea on how to prevent this in the future. Boom. Now you're actually making Yang being framed have some more relevance other than just for Cinder to make a point during her frickin' speech. So then we get a scene I absolutely love. The Arcos talk. Pyrrha is still freaking out about all she learned about with the maidens and magic and all of this other stuff. And Jean is there, and Jean is trying to help. I like this for multiple reasons. The first of which is that, of course, Jean is there for his teammates, for his friend. This is also why I wish Arcos had been a confirmed thing as a Volume frickin' 2's ending, not what happens here, but we'll get there. So then she's freaking out, she's panicking, all this other stuff. Now, her emotions go haywire, and she shoves Jean against the wall with her semblance. And then when she realizes what's happening, she does it. She apologizes, and she runs away. And then Jean is just sitting there like, what did I say? And my note is literally just informing him, you did nothing wrong, Jean. In fact, I agree with the people who say that Jean said all the right things in this scene. Because he did. He was there. He was supportive. It was just the weight of this whole thing. The weight of this whole thing just is getting to her. So then Ruby starts picking up on the fact that something's wonky when she finds out that Coco also thought she saw something during her match. And, Kel, surprise, it was against Mercury and Emerald. So, I guess nobody but Team Coffee was told about the weirdness. Like, Coco doesn't show up out of nowhere, show up to Osmond's office and be like, look, this makes no goddamn sense. Something's up here because there's da-da-da-da. And then they started investigating. Then they started getting suspicious. Let's actually use our brains. That would have been awesome. But no, instead, we gotta have Ruby be the frickin' detective for no real reason. So then, Ruby encounters Mercury, who was told to lay low. So what the fuck is he doing here? It just bugs the everlasting shit out of me. And then we get Penny against Pyrrha. Bad matchup. Even Mercury has to point out, ooh, metal versus polarity. That's not going to go well. Ugh. So then we get the Penny versus Pyrrha fight. And it's all well and good until slow-mo is used to emphasize Penny's death. I'm not a fan of how that worked. Of how that played out. It just really kind of it hurt rewatches. In the moment it's fine, except for making me look like a moron, but other than that. So then we get Cinder's speech about how this was not an accident or a tragedy, but the result of what happens when you put your faith in men who claim to be our guardians but are in fact just men. Yeah, because that doesn't sound feminist at all. Anyway, she points out the whole thing with Penny's creation having been kept secret from Ozpin. What the hell would Atlas need with machines disguised as a little girl? Because it's like, I don't think the Grimm can tell the difference. That's actually an interesting idea to me, but I'll leave that for you to debate. But yeah, and she states that she hails from Mistral, and it's no better there, that it's more oppression than anything else. So then in the middle of the speech, you get some incompetent Atlas soldiers that don't notice the Grimm until they're right on top. The Grimm are right on top of them. And then of course panic starts flowing because the Grimm start attacking. And then we get Ozpin calling up Ironwood, and as he's trying to get people to calm down, unsuccessfully, because of course, you kind of screwed things up, Ironwood. Hate to say this. And then Ozpin calls Ironwood and is pissed. He is just right pissed. It's just like, look, he literally tells Glinda and Crow, just get to the city, now. And then he calls up Ironwood and he's just like, you brought your army to my kingdom, James. Use it. And as my best friend Steve pointed out way back when this volume came out, can you really blame him? So then Neo frees Roman, further proving my point about keeping him on the proving my point of Atlas being incompetent, because they put Roman on the frickin' command ship. Really? At least the prison at the end of Volume 2 looked like it was a ground-based prison, not one of Ironwood's frickin' ships. Like, really? Ugh. Then Adam Torres transporting Grimm just to lay it on thick. So then the Grimm attack starts up, and Weiss is sad about Penny. There's no, oh my god, she was a robot? What? No, it's poor Penny, you know? Kind of further proving my point of why did you keep it secret? But then we get Ruby and Pyrrha still being in shock, which makes perfect sense. I mean, yeah, Penny just lost, or Ruby, excuse me, just lost her best friend. And Pyrrha, well, she just murdered someone. Yeah. So then we get Osmond launching the lockers, I think. I could have sworn there was a shot of him pressing a button on his console and then that launches the lockers. Was that just me? I don't know. And so then the students band together. Port and Oobleck start fighting the Grim in the arena, so that the students can get on, can survive. I like that. It shows more of the caring that the teachers have. Then, and then Ironwood gets to show off his skills for a bit and his overpowered pistol. I like the meme that actually calls that the Halo 1 pistol. I choose to go with that because I would say that has the equivalent power. Then Ironwood gives the students choices. You can either fight to defend the school or you can get out. And no one will fault you if you leave, which is understandable, especially considering how many people are scrambling to get the hell out of there. It's fully understandable because I suppose, how do I want to put this? I suppose there could be different types of huntsmen, like heroes in My Hero Academia, but I don't know. And again, it's for some of them they're probably first years, so yeah. Because you're in Starfleet doesn't mean you're an automatic badass. Been watching the Little Runners video on Wrath of Khan today, actually. So forgive me if that's a little fresh in my mind. So then we have Ruby taking charge because after Ironwood's ship gets blasted down, the ship that Ironwood takes gets blasted down because of course, Roman hacks the tech, which just proves which again is that whole, which ties into both the Mary Sue virus debatable point I made earlier and the point I made before about him not knowing what antivirus software is, but I digress. When Ironwood's ship goes down, Ruby takes charge and immediately goes to try and get the ship back because she knows she's got to try and do something. It's a nice touch and I like it. So all the fighting wakes up the Grim Wyvern, who ends up being a spawner, basically a flying spawn pool for the Grim. Which, again, I said it was in Volume 4 where we saw the birth of a Grim. I suppose this technically counts, too. So the retcon actually happened here and not in Volume 4 like I thought. Ouch. Like I said, I still would have preferred the younger the Grim is, the less of a bone face mask thing is. And honestly, I think the Grim Wyvern spawning fully born Grim would actually have a degree of sense, but that's just my opinion. So then we get Velvet the Awesome against the mechs because of course all of these students are fighting at Beacon and all of this other stuff. Blake's about to has to go confront Adam and all this stuff. Yang's trying to get to the others. I am in the camp that likes Velvet's semblance and her weapon because they work in conjunction with each other In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if the mimicry semblance was discovered first, and then they made the weapon to be kind of a copy device. I like that. Light weapons made out of light. It's an interesting concept, and I like it. Not much for me to say, except I love that scene, and it has one of my favorite songs of all time, "I May Fall." So then Weiss, at the end of the fight, after Velvet gets knocked out, manages to summon the Knight's arm. Progress, once again. So then we get RWBY versus Neo and Roman. Now, I looked it up previously during the rough go at this. Their ages are not specified, so the relationship, which I was bringing up in conjunction with my next point, actually, which is, it's not about what I have, because RWBY is just looking at this like, what do you have to gain from all of this? And Roman is like, you're asking the wrong questions, Red. It's not about what I have to gain, but that I can't afford to lose. Now, admittedly, that I thought I admittedly originally thought that the line was, it's not about what I have to gain, it's about what I can't afford to lose. But he says, it's that I can't afford to lose. Now, that can be interpreted one of two ways. Something precious to him will be lost if he defies Cinder, or he just wants to keep on living. You know, me, I will do what I do best. Lie, steal, cheat, and anticlimactically die. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, he's very pessimistic. Like, he's literally like, you want to be a hero? Well, then die like all the other huntsmen and huntresses throughout history. The real world is cold. It's brutal. It's unforgiving. You know, because he just does not see the point. He doesn't see the point of continuing to fight. Then, like I said, he goes, and then he makes his he makes his big speech, and then he gets eaten by the griffin and exploded. Yep, that's how the best villain in this entire series, in my opinion, and at least some other people's opinions, that's how the best villain in the series dies. Stupidly. So then we get. So I haven't really been talking about Crow and Galinda fighting in the city, but Ironwood comes out after his crashed ship, and he manages, with Team Cardin being useless, and he approaches Crow and Galinda, and he's just like, "This area is secure, or we need to establish a safe zone." And then it's like, hey, and then Crow immediately gets this look of anger on his face, switches his sword to scythe mode, and then he slashes a Grim apart, or by him. Like, as soon as he activates scythe mode, Ironwood's like, whoa, 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 Crow, I did not do this. And then as Crow starts running towards him, he immediately flips his gun around. Do I have something that I can show this off with? Yes, I do. He's holding his gun, and then he's like, whoa, Crow, I did not do this. And then Crow starts running towards him. Ironwood does a nice gesture. Flips his gun around, and he starts holding it like this. Because he wants Crow to know, we're on the same side. Wait. I am not trying to be antagonistic towards you. This gesture, admittedly, now that I'm thinking about it, is about the only reason I have any hope for Ironwood's character past this volume. Because while he'll be an idiot, I don't think he'll be too antagonistic towards the heroes in the coming volumes. Love this Nerf gun, by the way. Hey, hey, it's the Fire Strike. Fire Strike? Yep, Fire Strike. I need to get another one so I can dual wield these. Anyways, sorry. Anyway, let's talk about, so yeah. And then Crow, of course, is just like, you idiot. I know you didn't do this. Because I'm not an idiot like you, who thinks that our enemies are incapable of this. Okay, so I talked about that. Alright, so Adam, meanwhile, has been in dealing. Blake has been trying to deal with Adam unsuccessfully. And she even makes the mistake of shooting at Adam. Now, I find a couple of things about Adam here interesting. Of course, Volume 5 will fuck all of this up, but sorry, this thing keeps moving because I keep moving. Anyways, Blake claims that she did not want all of this destruction. She wanted equality. And Adam points out that says point blank, what you want is impossible. And that's why she, and that's where their opinions differ, right? And because he feels so betrayed, he legit just looks at her and says, I am going to make it my mission to destroy everything you love. Then I will destroy you. And that mission starts with Yang's arm. I admit, when this first happened, I was livid. I was like, you took away a part of Yang. The way Yang ended this volume, I did not like. I'm just going to be honest. But that's... at least they did not kill Yang off. That's all I'm going to say to that. So, I also haven't been mentioning that Team Juniper, when they get to Beacon, are starting to fight. But then Ozpin shows up at the entrance to Beacon Tower, and Pyrrha just knows, okay, I gotta go do this now. Because Pyrrha has decided she needs to become the Fall Maiden. She needs to take on that power. So they go down into the vault. Jean, a vault can usually be used to protect something. That's something Jean doesn't get, but whatever. Then, and Cinder gets Amber, kills Amber, gets the full power. Jean tries to attack, to no avail, because it's Jean. He isn't that great of a fighter. He is admittedly a decent strategist, but he's not that great as a fighter in his own right. And that's a mistake, in my opinion. He should be better than he is at this point, in my opinion. Then Pyrrha tries to go help Jean and fight Cinder. Ozpin nixes that and says, no, get out of here. Here, go find Glinda, go find Ironwood, go find Crow, and bring them back here. The tower must not fall. Because the CCT tower system is stupid, like I said last time. Now, this is also the main reason why I can't subscribe to the Ozpin is evil theory, or that Ozpin killed Pyrrha. No, Pyrrha pulled dumbass. She was told to go get help. What does she do? She turns around and fights Cinder in a losing fight. I'm sorry, I just really get pissy about this. Then we get Cinder's comment about, she was right about you. Such arrogance. You know, the funny thing is that that's ironic, given that it's Cinder saying that. But yeah, I could see see that being the case. So then the finale of Volume 3 happens, and we get Cinder versus Ozpin. I will admit, there are fights in Volume 4 that I don't remember fondly. Again, I haven't seen Volume 4. I haven't really rewatched Volume 4. I think I've rewatched like a couple episodes of Volume 4, but I'm going to re-examine it. But at the time, I remember Volume 4's fights not very fondly. Like, at all. The Geistgrim is okay. I remember the Geistgrim battle for me being okay. The final battle against the Knuckleavy is shrug, and then Crow versus Tyrion is But regardless, this fight is pretty boring, and it only lasts like 30 seconds, and it's just like, why? Now, some people say that that's because Ozpin threw this fight. Question: why did he throw this fight? Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, because he didn't want the maiden powers transferring to, to Salem, possibly, or whoever. I disagree. For one simple reason. And that is, there are ways to subdue somebody without killing them. KOs are a thing. Incapacitate her. Break every bone in her body. Something. Good. Ugh. So then Ozpin gets killed. Yes, it's confirmed. This is Ozpin dying here. Roll my eyes at it. So I combined like 3 notes of my rough notes. For those, if you're wondering about that, I take rough notes in this thing, this little black notebook, and then I transfer them into the one that I use for these actual videos, which is also how I'm going to be able, which is this, going from this to this is how I'm going to be structuring Volume 4 and 5, by the way, because like I said, if I go linearly, this is going to, my Volume 4 and 5 videos are going to suck ass. Just saying. So I'm going to actually have some structure to it. But yeah, my note in my good version is Cinder versus Pyrrha, pointlessness and Mary Sue arrows topped off with nonsense. Okay, that's admittedly a lot to unpack here, so let's unpack this, shall we? Let's start with, you know what? Let's not start with the pointlessness point first, because I actually have something in my, how would I do it differently? I actually have a way to fix this so that it makes more sense and still keep up with the whole Pyrrha is supposed to die here thing, because that was the point. It was always supposed to be Pyrrha dying here. That was always the intent. Okay? So, I'm going to talk about the Mary Sue arrows. Why can the arrows break apart and then reform? or at will like that and still keep the momentum. Like, I get it that it's probably Cinder's semblance, but even then, it's like, really? That is so stupid, in my opinion. And also that we can do the Achilles thing. We only see it one time, too. So it's like, really? Ugh. And then there's the disintegration, where I'm just like, okay, we know that they're going to use Pyrrha's metal for stuff, but is there really enough in just her crown for all of that? I don't know. I mean, maybe her shield, her weapon and her shield. That, I guess that makes more sense, but I don't know. I actually like the one idea Fan came up with actually for Jean working in secret on a project, but that obviously did not happen. Spoiler alert. So then, it, in, so just before she disintegrates, it's it's of course Cinder has to taunt, she has to gloat, and then Pyrrha is just like, "Do you believe in destiny?" Saying the line again. She said it to Jean earlier. And Cinder just coldly replies, "Yes." And then kills her. Right in front of RWBY, who has just gotten up to the top. Up after Jean's freak out. Because I skipped a note. Yay. Pyrrha, the idiot that sunk Arcos. Okay, so Pyrrha kisses Jean, shoves him into the rocket locker, launches it into Vale, and then goes to fight Cinder like an idiot. Then Jean freaks out, calls Weiss and RWBY, and just is like, "Save Pyrrha, please!" And then and then Pyrrha, so they go off. RWBY gets to the top just as Pyrrha dies, and it was all for nothing. The tower was still destroyed. Beacon was done, and actually, what's funny is doing that actually made it so that there's no chance, at least right now, that they can get control of Beacon again, because the Grim Dragon is frozen into to Beacon Tower, and that's attracting the Grim constantly. I mean, yes, now it still would have been hard to get control out of Beacon again, but come on. Ugh. So here's how I would have done the Cinder versus Pyrrha fight. Okay. First, I tried doing this in one change. I can't. I really cannot do this in one change. So I failed at the change game. Sorry, guys. But here's what I would have done. So instead of Cinder and Pyrrha fighting in such a irritating battle, have the entirety of Team Juniper there. Have all three of them there. Also, have the transfer have actually worked. So Pyrrha actually has part of Amber's power or in her. Okay? You can even do the two souls thing to give Laura Bailey some more lines, because why not? And that increases the stakes. So now, not only does she have to try and protect the tower, but she also has to keep the remainder of Cinder's of the Fall Maiden powers out of Cinder's hands, and she's got to look out for her team. Make sense? Then what I would do is that I would have Cinder constantly losing this fight until the Grim Wyvern shows up, wrecks Hicks Beacon Tower, at her request, and then Cinder manages to get one arrow out, pop, into the chest. Pyrrha is out of order at this point. Touch, incinerate. Boom. That's when they lose. RWBY gets to the top. Up. The silver eyes go off. And then there you go. Now, you'll notice Beacon Tower still gets destroyed. Okay? But at least that would be a mistake on the part of our heroes. Not getting Cinder away from the tower before they started fighting. But that would make sense because they're amateurs at this point. Right? So that's how I would do it if I had to kill Pyrrha and if I had to have Beacon Tower destroyed in the process. Then it would be the same thing. The Silver Eyes activate. Although I would do more with Silver Eyes in the future, but that's beside. Let's save that for now. And then that's it. So the Silver Eyes activate. Crow gets RWBY and Yang out of there, and then at his assistance, because Tai Yang dodges the question, even though he brought up her doing a number on the Grim Dragon. You already opened the freaking can of worms, Tai Yang. You should have just taken responsibility, in my opinion, but whatever. But then Crow explains about the Silver Eyes and about how it's his job to continue on where Ozpin left off. And then she goes to Yang. And Yang is broken at this point. Yang claims that she doesn't care about Blake, because Blake just ran. Weiss got carted off to her home. Then she just returns the line that Crow gave her earlier. Sometimes bad things just happen, RWBY, and there's nothing you can do about it. Which is something that RWBY is not just going to fully latch on to like Yang has, and this scene hurt. This scene hurt me. RWBY, as she's leaving, turns around and says to Yang, "I love you." And Yang remains silent. That hurt me more than you can know. Because the one thing that Yang's character is all about is the fact that she will do anything for her family, especially her sister. Which we'll talk about Raven's role in that later. But for now, family is a very important aspect. And Yang very much believes, spoiler alert for if you figure out stuff with Volume 5, that blood makes you related, loyalty makes you family. So then our narrator returns. It turns out it's our main villain for the series, Salem. Where do I get that name? The credits. Because of course. Anyway, so she's talking about how that I do like that she points out, because it's clear she's talking to Ozpin. I do like that she points out that Ozpin's faith in humanity was not misplaced, because banded together they are a considerable threat, which is where that unity theme comes in again, right? But divide them, plant doubt in their minds, and that will all wash away. All that you've built will be torn down, and your guardians have failed. This is the beginning of the end, Ozpin, and I can't wait to watch you burn. I'm done. 2.5 hours, holy shit. Longer than I was thinking. Anyways, there it is. Hopefully a much better, much more improved version of this. That is my volume 3 video. I have nothing to say about the post-credit scene. Crow can turn into a bird. Woo! That will be elaborated on not until volume 5, actually, sadly. But regardless, I do hope you have nevertheless enjoyed this. I hope that you've found this enjoyable, engaging, despite, the production quality's taking a dip. I'm sorry about that. Not much I can do. But regardless, I will see you guys for volume 4. I'm curious what I'm gonna think of volume 4 when I get there. And I am sorry for failing to get if I failed to get these both volume 4 and volume 5 out before next Saturday, as in 1 week from tomorrow, from my perspective. Yeah, I apologize. But until then, this has been Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers. This is Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers signing out, and I hope you have a good night, or day, or whenever you're watching this. Later.